Hello everybody, my name is Donna Ivey. I'm the Academic and Creative Director of the Future Work Skills Academy, and we are today talking with another group of nominees for our Human Ingenuity competition. We're very excited to have Felipe Guarin and Catalina Latero, I hope I pronounced those correctly, who have been nominated for quite an incredible, novel idea they came up with in response to the pandemic. We also have our other interviewer, who's Ellen DeResta, here with us today. And so I'm going to now hand over to Felipe and Catalina to introduce themselves, a little bit of their background, and then we're going to go through a number of interview questions so you can find out all the detail around the background and the processes they went through and their experience in creating something extremely novel in response to the coronavirus. So I'm going to now hand over to you two to introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you.
So 8 years ago, we started a company in Colombia, in Bogota, called Whateverworks. We generally do branding and design and innovation. And ever since then, we have been specializing in marketing campaigns, in a lot of branding, identity, everything design related. And a couple of years ago, we got an itch where we really wanted to become better professionals. We were kind of stuck in what we were doing. We wanted to grow personally as well. So we decided to move to Japan and kind of get ourselves uncomfortable to find ourselves again as designers and as innovators. So we moved to Japan. We started doing our master's at Keio University in design and innovation. It's a university where everything's based on the Sustainable Development Goals done by the UN. So it's very interesting because every project has to have a purpose. And now that has definitely made us into new kind of designers. We definitely are seeking now for purpose and for a lot of interesting projects that can actually give something back to the community, which is the world, basically.
Yeah, and we are both, Catalina is Colombian American. I am Colombian. She's a designer, and I study political science, and now I'm studying design. We're very interested in how creativity also can be applied to designing policy, and which from a point of view, that is what we are aiming to do with this proposal, to design policy, health policy from the private sector.
So I just, there's a couple of things that I just wanted to touch on there. You deliberately chose that university, and that was a choice that you made after investigating global opportunities. And was there anything close to that, that university, or is this really one of the world's clearest relationships between sustainable and social good?
Follow a lot in the steps of MIT. I mean, they work in the same type of environment where it's separated by labs and you have to apply to a lab within the university, within the program. And that lab and that professor accepts you, and every lab has a different pipeline for innovation. So for example, I am in one that is focused in sustainability, circular design, biodesign, and speculative design. So you kind of choose within design and innovation where you want to go. Felipe is in one that is in technology and business. So they're very different, but in all within design, basically. And well, MIT is similar. It's just that this is like the Japanese version.
So I'll hand over to Ellen to ask the first question, and the lead into that would be exactly what is your response, what is your novel response to the coronavirus, and then the context around that. So I'll just hand over to Ellen to take that first question.
Yeah, and you know, I'm really thrilled to hear about your university experience. I'm an innovation strategy consultant, and I work with clients to make sure they rise above the day-to-day so they can not be disrupted, right? And so, and I also do some mentoring at MIT because it's very close to me. So, so it's really great to hear what you're doing. And I would just love for you to describe what you did and then talk about like how you got there. What led to that development of that idea?
The proposal that we did for the MIT COVID Challenge was to leverage the distribution networks of FMCG companies to disseminate prevention information on under-resourced populations that don't have access to internet. That was the main proposal. And how we got there was that basically on February, when the virus started to come out of China, we got really anxious and upset, and because we didn't really know anything about the virus, and we only knew that it was coming to Japan and that it was dangerous. So I guess it's something that everyone can relate to. And we started to think, how can we help? So we started looking for trustable institutions and design challenges where we can apply our creativity, our training, our skill set to come up with solutions to the emerging problems. So we found the MIT COVID Challenge. We found another one in Dubai, and the UN was also doing some design challenges, and the Johns Hopkins University. So we started applying, and we started like putting ourselves into this mindset of finding solutions to the problems. And MIT did a great job in classifying the problems. We just chose one problem and started ideating on that.
What was that problem?
How to take information to vulnerable communities, basically.
So because we are living in Japan, but our families are in Colombia, when we started feeling that the virus was getting here, our biggest worry was not actually for it to get to Japan, but for it to get to Latin America. I mean, we understand that Latin America sometimes is a mess in certain governmental issues. So we were very worried about the decisions that would be taken. And it's kind of insane because our worry became true. Now we are trying to control the situation back at home. We're worried about our parents. We're worried about our friends. But we were pretty worried when the virus started in China. So I think that's what gave us the most anxiety we've had. Felipe had his first panic attack. I am a little bit more experienced. I've had panic attacks for a couple of years now. But so when he had one, that's when we realized, oh, okay, we're very anxious and we should channel all this energy somewhere.
You have a lot of ideas, right? You had to come. How did you choose this one?
I think in the ideation part, we also have a game where you cannot say no to any idea, or there's no bad idea. So we started ideating and we started throwing a lot of ideas. And when Catalina threw that to the conversation, it was an immediate yes. It was an immediate solution that we saw, and we started like looking for problems for that idea. Like, no, it's difficult to convince the FMCG companies, or it's difficult to print something on the label. But when we started researching, it was possible to do. So, and it is a very low cost, high impact solution that companies can do now, even without us. And that is basically the idea. That is what we want. We want the companies to see in their labels a new media to disseminate information on humanitarian causes. and they can use it right now without even telling us, and they can attach to their labeling a new type of causes. I don't know, the viruses right now, but they can use it for other humanitarian causes. So I guess that when we came up with the idea, we just knew that that one was covered a lot of what we wanted it to cover, that it was to use something that it was branding related, marketing related, that it is our expertise, and that it had a low cost and high impact in society. And it solved the problem that we wanted to solve, that it was to take information to people that didn't have internet.
So it's been interesting because ever since then we decided to do our research on the specific subject. We found that it's not only very beneficial for the people who are getting educated on good practices on hygiene to protect themselves from COVID-19, but also for companies as well. I mean, we found that when the pink ribbon for breast cancer started getting adapted to product packaging, their products like Campbell's soup started selling almost double the amount. So, I mean, it is a very beneficial thing for humans, but we think that it could be very beneficial for the brands as well. And we actually did research. Let me share my screen for a sec. Oh, I can't. Can you give me permission to? So we started doing some research with the people that we actually want the information to get to. And we discovered that not only would they be interested in receiving that information through their products, but they would consider the product to be more trustable. So the product awareness would increase, and the trust that the people have in their products would definitely go up. So, for example, this was one of the places where we wanted to get to. It's called Sicuco Bolivar in Colombia. It's a town with 19,000 people, and they have water twice a week. The energy goes out almost every week. And most of the people there don't have access to internet. They don't have access to radio. The way they get information is that a government car parks there like once a week, once every 2 weeks. And they get screamed at through megaphones, but Coca-Cola still reaches them. So it's very interesting to see how a lot of the times, even where government says they don't have any access to, private companies actually get there. So these were the people that we wanted to reach, and it's been amazing because we have been able to. It didn't only communicate us with the project itself, but we have now been talking to them as much as we can, trying to understand if the problem has reached, if the products with the information have reached.
So also having this reference of this town that we wanted to reach also helped like crystallize the idea and make it more real.
To talk about the choices that you made getting there, and there's a follow-on to that question, is that you obviously have a challenge, and that is to get this. And then how did you decide on the fast-moving consumer goods? How did you know that? So what made you come up with that they could get there, but none of these other things, like no internet, as you say, periodic electricity, and no water once a week?
We have been working with brands in Colombia for 7-8 years.
Right.
So we already knew the reach. Through advertising campaigns, when we have done research in the past, we understand the consumer, and we understood back when we worked for them that we could reach a lot of people that public services weren't reaching. the way the idea started was to make a graphic that people could download and print within their packaging. That idea has evolved a bit. Also, we did testing on the final consumer, or the people that we want to impact in this case. And what we reached the conclusion is that the easiest way was to make a sticker that people could apply immediately. Because when we started talking to very big companies, they pre-print their packagings 4-6 months before. So the most immediate way to impact was through a sticker. And some variations were discussed. Some people decided that maybe they could put a flyer inside, or put a little color around their oil cooking bottles. But what we've tried to convince the companies to do is that they have to put it in their product themselves, because if not, papers get thrown out very fast. Other types of flyers or papers will not be looked at more than once. But what we found is that when a message is delivered through the brand, and the brand is already familiar, and you see the message next to the familiarity that you have with the brand, it leverages on the trust that people already have on that brand, and it's more susceptible to actually change the behavior of the person. So,
And first, when we thought about it, we didn't thought about it in terms of the FMCG companies. We thought about it in what products were reaching that population that we wanted it to, and we came to the conclusion that it was in this town, Sicuco. It was a beer, basically. Beer is, they have it there.
they have more beer than water.
They have more beer than water. So beer was one of the products. But then we researched, and also rice and cooking oil, milk were also part of the products that we aim to apply this idea to.
So you talked, it's really interesting how you talked about how you evolved the idea and the research that you did. Did others input to the evolution? Like, did you get input directly from the companies potentially, or from the government groups? Like, how did that come together?
So it was a combination between the people that we want to impact and the companies themselves. So we did surveys on very small towns around Colombia to get in touch with the people that we wanted to impact. And we had interviews with FMCG companies. They were the ones that told us, like, look, we're very interested, but our packaging has been printed for the next 6 months. So they gave us a lot of indications on sizes. They gave us access to the people that we wanted to interview as well. Some companies offered the employees of their company to be part of studies. So it's been a combination of both.
In our conversation we had prior to this, you, I think you mentioned something about that you were giving medical advice, and so you worked with people that specialize in that, and also some other individuals related to visuals, etc. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we created a partnership with Harvard med students that they were doing research on DIY masks at the moment, when masks were a controversial subject. But now that they are massively adopted, now new problems have arisen. Like, people are doing parties, and they're coming into closed spaces, more than 30 people, and that type of behavior increases the risk of infection. So this medium can be used to act fast, to take that information that the doctors and the medical staff and the medical researchers in Harvard are looking, and we can take that information and take it to the specific places where those problems are emerging. So that's part of the solution.
So-
The connection between Harvard med students and the population in Sicuco Bolívar.
The way we explained it to the FMCG companies was that we wanted to connect the people that don't know with the people that know. We don't know. We know just branding and marketing, but we connect them directly to people that know exactly what they need to know.
So the idea is that the voice, and we just channel the voice of medical staff and their recommendations through design and branding.
Throughout this process, what time are we talking? What time frame are we talking about? So from the beginning of the challenge, the hackathon, until now, how long has that been?
A month and a half.
So very fast. So very fast. Now, along the way, did you encounter any obstacles to your not just the idea, because we appreciate that that's changed, as you've said, you're getting feedback loops, you're prototyping, but some things that really stopped you in your tracks to achieving your ultimate objective that you started with the humans that you were focused on in your solution?
We got, especially in Colombia, sometimes culturally, we appreciate more innovation that comes from outside than the one that happens within. So a lot of people, because this was a new idea and they hadn't done it before. When we first pitched the idea and we said, like, look, we have this idea, we should do it, we have the graphics, please use them. Companies were very scared to do so, to take the risk to do something new. So that for me was very disappointing, because when we decided to tell them that MIT had already approved, when we were featured in Forbes, that's when people started listening to the idea and believing in the idea. So it needed kind of the people from outside of Colombia to tell them that it was a good idea for them to believe in them.
And I think that's the thing about innovation, that everyone wants it, but they don't realize that innovation is something new. Maybe Helen, you can talk about us if you have had that problem. That people want innovation, but they don't want something new.
They don't want to take the risk, and a lot of the times innovation takes experimenting, and experimenting will definitely have a chance for it to fail. And people are so scared of failing that they ask for innovation, but they want you to assure them that it will work. So a lot of the times that's an opposite one from each other.
That is the age-old problem. You are exactly right. And that is a huge barrier for people even starting. And what I'm finding really fascinating is, you say that that's, true in Colombia, but it is true everywhere, right? Like everyone says, oh, we want to do something brand new, but well, we can't do that. We have never seen it before, right? Thinking about giving someone else the confidence to try, because everyone is so familiar with that terrible feeling of being told no or fearing, failure. What words of wisdom or what advice would you give them to inspire them to actually try something if they have an idea?
I think failure is part of the process, and confronting and like nurturing that kind of thick skin about failure. It's part of the success. So in the innovation path, I think it's very important to try a lot of times, and to ideate, to prototype, and to test. Basically, that is for us our method to get to a lot of ideas that we have applied along the years, and new ideas. So yeah, no, I think failure, it's part of the process.
So when you were talking about, oh, sorry, go ahead. Were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that something that we have learned, at least here in our new program is to have a purpose every time you do something, like a good purpose. And good, not in the sense of that things are bad or good, but in the sense that you want to do good for the community. So a lot of the times creating out of personal pleasure is really nice. But living in the world that we are right now, we need a lot of people coming up with a lot of solutions at the same time for a lot of problems that we have. So I think also when doing, it's important to find a problem that will give it the project purpose. A lot of things like, I don't know, fashion that kind of went out of control a little bit. Everyone wanted to become a fashion designer, but no one was considering where the products were coming from, where they were going, how fast you wanted to change your clothes, how fast you wanted people to change their clothes and pressure them into doing it, but without measuring consequences. I think that could change a little bit if from the beginning of a project you consider impact and purpose for the project.
That's really awesome. And how did you build that purpose into, like, I wanted to pick up on something Felipe had said about testing, because testing does give people confidence, but you know, how did you test something that hadn't been done? Like, what you talked about, making prototypes and then testing. Can you talk about what you did for testing?
So we initially sent the graphics to the people that we wanted to impact, to the communities. And we wanted to understand previously to sending them the graphics, what were their needs, what they knew about COVID-19, what they didn't know, what they needed to know. So that gave us a head start, because we assumed a couple of things. People in Harvard assumed a couple of things, but it's not until you actually test out the information that you realize, oh, okay, this is super obvious for them. They don't need to know this. What we need to reinforce are other good practices. And so we did the testing online. We used networks of people that were willing to help us find people in those places, which it was really important to have support from friends and family and people that were willing to even give like 5 minutes of connecting us with someone they knew.
And that's also, I loved how you hit on that, because that really did bring the purpose into every part of the process, even the testing. So that's really awesome.
It's very interesting to me as we progress through these interviews. There's themes that come up that are fairly obvious, because there's some deep practice here that we're talking about. We've been working through design thinking for many years, and these are starting to become quite mature processes. And there's some things that seem interesting to me, is that you need to scaffold. Things need to scaffold. They need to lay on something else. And that something else is not just another product or a stack or a distribution network, or as you in technology, for example, you can't just throw a new technology out there. It's got to sit on top of existing infrastructure. So there's a combinatorial basis to your innovation. Very few things act in a vacuum. But to me, the scaffolding goes beyond the physical and starts into, people seem to really need to rely on their networks, friends and family. Without those networks, then it's impossible to achieve the purpose, because you can completely lose sight of your purpose through not having access to the people that you really want to communicate with and you really want to understand. And then also having access to brands of trust, to icons of trust. As example, an expert is always somebody from somewhere else. The idea that, well, if that's the case, if that's our psychological constructs that we operate in, then we need to think about who we're going to bring in as that third party, that trusted brand or source that people will listen to bring our ideas in with them. So it seems that without those things, people would find it quite frustrating, because the risk profile is too high, but we seem to still have this love affair with influencers and pop stars and whatever that seems to wash all the risk away in that. So I think that those two important points. Would you think, Ellen, Felipe, Catalina, would you think they had an essential part to play that you couldn't have gone ahead without them?
Well, I think we see that happen all the time. And I think that you make a really good point about assumptions, right? And what the experts are going to assume about other people. And you find out they just don't know. They're guessing, right? So it's really nice to kind of level that playing field a little bit.
Yeah, when we started studying with the other students and we started presenting projects for professors, some of the students were always worried about impressing the professor. And one day when we were talking, we were saying that we really don't need to impress the professors. The people that we need to impress are other students, because that's going to be our network in the future. That's going to be the people that you remember in class, like, oh, he did a really cool project. Oh, he used to be very driven. And those people are going to end up in really cool positions in companies. They're going to be decision makers. And those are the people that you need in the future. So a lot of the times students, we forget that the other students are those people that we need to connect with. And that's our network.
Just as a bit of a wrap up, I was wondering where you are now with everything, and have you come up with have you landed on anything in particular, and what sort of messages are you getting out to your end users? What is it now at this point? Because I think there'll be sanitation and masks and distancing and all that. So what are the messages, and where are you up to with that?
So for this specific communities in Colombia, right now, the messages that we're sending are keep your distance, which is proven as far as today, because that changes every day, right? It's the most effective measure you can take to avoid getting infected. So that's the most important one right now. We decided to communicate it in terms of cultural context. So for example, we took an example that we saw in Japan, where they were explaining distance in terms of tuna fish. So you have to keep one tuna fish distance from another person. And that was actually really beautiful to apply to these communities that most of them haven't had formal studies. And what we assume people know that it's 1 meter or 2 meters, a lot of the times it's not obvious for everyone. So that was interesting. That was a nice evolution to have within the graphics. The other thing that we are communicating is the use of masks, and not only the use of masks, but the proper use of masks. In the surveys, we realized a lot of people knew about the masks, but they had no idea how to use them, if they had to wash them or not. We started doing graphics showing water in ways that we then understood that they don't know. For them, water comes in buckets, it doesn't just come out of running water all the time. So graphically, that was interesting also to adapt to the context. And what is the other message?
How to clean them.
How to clean
one of the
masks.
most important messages, and to use reusable masks and
hand washing.
hand washing.
Reusable masks are now important as well, because as we are so many humans using masks all the time, the problem of masks washing up shores is increasing. So we decided to change the message from use masks to use reusable masks.
And we're now applying it to one of the biggest companies in Colombia of cooking oil. So that has been the first company that is going to apply it. And we have a lot of leads on rice and a beer company that also wants to apply the idea.
Well, that has been, been wonderful to unpack this innovation with you two. It's extremely inspiring, and I'm sure that'll be, and people will be excited to hear the next step with you guys, the next chapter in your journey. And we look forward to seeing these labels, these stickers, ubiquitously applied across all those staple goods that will get to your target audience. I think it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today and for your generosity and the information that you've given us. And so I'm going to now say a farewell to everyone, and just for everyone out there, if you know of anyone who has very similar to Catalina and Felipe, who have responded to the pandemic in an innovative way, you can go to our website and enter them in our Human Ingenuity competition. And other than that, we'll say goodbye to everybody, and thank you very much for your participation today.